Monarchs War Arc begins after the International Guild Conference arc as the Frost Monarch appears at the Korean Hunters Association to kill Chairman Go Gunhee. Chairman Go wonders if there is any way to communicate with the monarch and realizes that he cannot feel his presence. He acknowledges that the Frost Monarch is not an opponent he can handle. The Frost Monarch creates a completely new dimension to isolate them from the outside world. Chairman Go is shocked and begins to think he might be dreaming. Suddenly, the Frost Monarch attacks his shoulder with ice magic and questions if the pain feels like a dream to him. Chairman Go acknowledges that it is indeed reality and demands to know who the Frost Monarch is. The Frost Monarch realizes that Chairman Go does not recognize him and dismisses him as just a human. The Frost Monarch releases his mana and declares that he has no interest in the weak. He suggests that Chairman Go should show his fragment of brilliant light. The Frost Monarch questions if Fragment of Brilliant Light is afraid that his vessel would break if he reveals his true powers. He remarks that Chairman Go will die anyway and decides that talking to him is a waste of time. The Frost Monarch attacks with powerful ice magic, sending shockwaves throughout the room. Suddenly, he notices Chairman Go activating his powers and decides to attack again. Chairman Go punches the attack away with a single hand. He observes that the attack breaks the glass but reveals nothing outside. Chairman comments that he is impressed by the Frost Monarch's ability to isolate his office in a dimensional gap. The Frost Monarch reveals that he has been searching for the greatest brilliant light for a long time, referring to Chairman Go's vessel. He admits that he never expected the light to be trapped in a broken vessel, unable to control its powers. He declares that he has found all 7 rulers and has already killed 2 of them, and vows to destroy Chairman Go's vessel without any regrets. Chairman Go confidently accepts the Frost Monarch's challenge and tells him to give it his best shot. The Frost Monarch, seeing Chairman Go's confidence, calls it a foolish attempt and claims that Chairman Go stands no chance against him. He explains that he has taken over his body completely, whereas the ruler has only borrowed the body as a vessel. Both begin powering up as the Frost Monarch attacks with ice magic. Chairman Go shatters the ice and dashes forward at the Frost Monarch. The Frost Monarch creates a weapon out of ice, but Chairman Go dodges the attack and counters. The Frost Monarch blocks the attack and freezes Chairman Go's entire hand, but Chairman Go breaks free. Chairman Go realizes that he needs to finish the fight quickly before his body gives out and tries to punch the Frost Monarch. The Frost Monarch blocks the attack with an ice barrier, but moves back to reduce the impact of the punch. Chairman Go suddenly feels his body failing as he reaches his limit. The Frost Monarch comments that Chairman Go is at his limit and calls him a disappointing attempt. He leaps forward and pierces Chairman Go's chest with an ice weapon, causing him to cough blood. The Frost Monarch remarks that the Fragment of Brilliant Light will need 1 or 2 years to find another vessel, while their army is already prepared for battle. He claims that the rulers made a mistake by trying to protect the inhabitants of this world. Frost Monarch questions if the monarchs seem too weak to the rulers and if they could defeat them while directing their attention elsewhere. Chairman Go laughs and grabs the ice weapon, declaring that he did not fight for no reason and that the Frost Monarch has overlooked a crucial variable. The Frost Monarch, confused, demands to know what the variable is. Chairman Go launches a flame attack at the Frost Monarch, and Frost Monarch barely dodges it. Frost Monarch questions if this is Chairman Go's trump card. Even in his final moments, Chairman Go laughs, realizing that his actual plan has worked and successfully breaks out of the dimensional gap. The Frost Monarch remarks that breaking out of the dimension will not change the outcome. Chairman Go calmly commands the ant shadow assigned to him to flee. The Frost Monarch is confused about how one ant shadow could achieve anything. He finally realizes that the shadow belongs to the Shadow Monarch and leaps at it, attempting to destroy it. To his surprise, Jinwoo appears and effortlessly blocks the attack. Jinwoo grabs the Frost Monarch by the throat and questions what he truly is asking, if he is an ice elf. The Frost Monarch questions, thinking he is the Shadow Monarch, about why he has not contacted them despite having a massive army of soldiers. Jinwoo recalls the ice elf he failed to extract as a shadow, referring to Barca, and feels slightly irritated. The Frost Monarch speculates that Jinwoo might be the crucial variable and unleashes his ice breath, freezing Jinwoo's hand. Jinwoo wonders if the Frost Monarch is a mage-type hunter and brings out his S-rank daggers to shatter the ice. Realizing he cannot compete with the Shadow Monarch, the Frost Monarch decides to flee and reminds Jinwoo of Chairman Go's condition. Jinwoo suddenly recalls that the shadow was assigned to Chairman and becomes worried. He looks at the association building and sees Chairman Go with a hole in his chest. The Frost Monarch creates a distraction by attacking Chairman with an ice arrow and taunts Jinwoo, saying that he can either fight him or save Chairman. Jinwoo attempts to control the arrow using his commander's authority, but the system notifies him that his opponent's mana is resistant to it. Frustrated, Jinwoo decides to block the arrow himself. He jumps at it and throws his dagger near the glass and successfully deflects the arrow. Suddenly, Jinwoo notices the Frost Monarch attempting to escape by opening a portal. Jinwoo uses his dagger rush skill to attack with multiple daggers simultaneously. The Frost Monarch blocks most of the daggers, but one strikes his back. Enraged, the Frost Monarch expresses disbelief that a mere human vessel inflicted a wound on him. He bids farewell to the Shadow Monarch, stating that he will wait for him, and suggests taking Chairman Go as his shadow as a gift. Jinwoo remembers Chairman Go and realizes it is too late for healing. He commands Beru to check on Chairman. Beru arrives at the association and Jinwoo orders him to save Chairman's life at all costs. Beru attempts to use his healing magic, but it fails to work on Chairman. Jinwoo decides to use the elixir of life, but Chairman Go stops him, requesting not to use any healing potions. Chairman thanks Jinwoo for coming to save him. Jinwoo pleads with him to hold on, saying that he will take him to a hospital. Chairman Go explains that it is no use and that no human doctor can help with the powers that attacked him. He expresses gratitude for having Jinwoo on their side and admits he never thought Jinwoo could possess such powers and thanks God for this. Chairman Go reflects that gates and dungeons were created to protect humans and that the rulers decided to protect all the humans this way. He tells Jinwoo that one day he will have to make a decision and requests him to choose humanity's side when that day comes. Chairman expresses his desire to have fought alongside other hunters like him, but his body never allowed it. He states that he has no regrets and is leaving the world's protection to the younger generation. In his final words, Chairman Go reflects on his thousands of heartbeats, knowing he does not have much time left. He expresses relief that he met Jinwoo and feels comforted knowing Jinwoo will protect humanity. Chairman Go Gunhee thanks Jinwoo for everything and slowly closes his eyes with a tear of happiness. Meanwhile, Chairman Go's death becomes the front page news of several magazines, reporting that he was brutally murdered after suffering a stab wound to his chest. The media also reports that Jonas's dead body was found in a river. With the deaths of 3 elite hunters, the world falls into a state of panic. Major media outlets across the globe cover the news, and the Federal Bureau issues a statement regarding their deaths. People begin to worry about who will protect the hunters when they are supposed to protect humans from magic beasts. The scene shifts to Chairman Go's funeral, which Jinwoo attends with Manager Woo. Jinwoo notices Manager Woo in a state of depression and asks if he is okay. Manager Woo admits that he has been feeling down lately, unable to process Chairman Go's death. He questions if the magic beast that killed Chairman was uncontrollable even with Jinwoo's powers. Jinwoo explains that it was too late by the time he reached Chairman. Manager Woo expresses disbelief that Chairman is gone and feels miserable, remembering how Chairman requested to hear everything about Jinwoo's trip to the States. He thanks Jinwoo for being with Chairman in his final moments. Jinwoo requests him not to thank him yet and says he should wait until he kills the Frost Monarch. Jinwoo swears upon his life to get revenge. Jinwoo requests Manager Woo to gather reporters for a press conference. Reporters flood the conference, and Jinwoo announces that a group of beasts with high intelligence is targeting elite hunters. He explains that these beasts are stronger than any other hunters and will stop at nothing to achieve their goals. One reporter asks if the beast that killed Chairman was working alone. Jinwoo clarifies that these beasts use magic to isolate their targets before attacking. He warns hunters who might be potential targets to stay with their colleagues at all times. Jinwoo, remembering that these beings are monarchs, acknowledges that no ordinary hunters can defeat them. He offers to be contacted through the Korean Hunters Association for those who do not have colleagues. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a discussion among the monarchs as the Frost Monarch informs them that the Shadow Monarch is on Earth. Yogamut recalls that the Frost Monarch previously stated there is no human vessel capable of containing the Shadow Monarch's powers, and adds that the same applies to the Dragon King, as it is impossible to find a vessel for him as well. The Frost Monarch confidently declares that the human is indeed the Shadow Monarch and that he is a greater threat than the fragments of brilliant light. He announces his intention to eliminate the Shadow Monarch and requests their help. Tarnak warns that fighting the Shadow Monarch is equivalent to choosing death and describes him as the strongest monarch. He suggests waiting for the Dragon King's return. The Frost Monarch, frustrated, accuses them of running away and reminds them that they are still monarchs. He expresses his unwillingness to rely on the Dragon King anymore and explains that this is their best chance to kill the Shadow Monarch while he is still in human form. He pleads with the monarchs again to join him in defeating the Shadow Monarch. Tarnak refuses to get involved, and Yogumunt explains that he does not want to meet the same fate as the Monarch of White Flames. Rakan calls them cowards, but Tarnak responds that he does not want to be controlled by the Shadow Monarch and fall into eternal slumber. Rakan argues that the monarchs have astral bodies, so the Shadow Monarch cannot control them. Tarnak counters by stating that both the Shadow Monarch and the Architect have joined forces and can replicate their copies, referring to Baran, and he does not want to become their pawn. Both Yogumunt and Tarnak leave after explaining their reasons for not opposing the Shadow Monarch. Rakan, wanting to confirm that the Shadow Monarch is still in human form, questions the Frost Monarch about it. The Frost Monarch explains that during their previous encounter, he was attacked with a poisoned dagger, which is something the Shadow Monarch would not typically do. Horatia agrees with the Frost Monarch's intuition, confirming that the Shadow Monarch would not resort to such a petty trick. Both Horatia and Rakan decide to help the Frost Monarch in his plan to kill the Shadow Monarch. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Jinwoo, who reflects on how Chairman Go expressed his feelings that he could die peacefully after Jinwoo completed the Jeju Island raid, but never thought Chairman would die so soon. Jinwoo attempts to detect the Frost Monarch's mana, but fails. He recalls what the King of Giants said about rulers and monarchs having astral bodies, which prevents them from being turned into shadows. Jinwoo realizes that he cannot track the monarch's movements using his shadows, but resolves that as long as he is a hunter, he will not let his prey escape. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Hunters Association, where everyone begins questioning who will become the next chairman. One board member explains that Chairman Go Gunhee, being an S-rank hunter, held great significance for the position. Another board member questions if they should consider hiring S-rank hunters from other countries, but warns that they should be cautious of S-rank hunters. He further suggests that after careful consideration, Manager Wu would be the perfect candidate for the role. Caught off guard, Manager Wu questions why he was selected. The board members explain their reasoning, stating that Manager Wu was Chairman Go's right hand and possesses both practical and leadership skills. They add that there is no rule requiring the chairman of the association to be an S-rank hunter, and that Manager Wu's past experience as a surveillance team manager would be a great asset for the position. Manager Wu calmly responds that he might not be the best choice for the position, and that there are others with more experience than him. The board members confidently state that Manager Wu has the power to mobilize the forces of Korean hunters and is on good terms with major guilds and is well acquainted with Sung Jinwoo. Manager Wu remarks that despite their many encounters, Jinwoo might not think they are close. The board members request Manager Wu to carefully consider the offer before rejecting it. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Scavenger Guild headquarters, where Thomas heads to the basement of the building. The security team starts shaking nervously upon seeing Thomas. Laura questions if Thomas is certain about giving the dagger as a gift to Jinwoo. Thomas responds that the dagger is nothing compared to the lives of his guild members, and questions if Laura thinks Jinwoo is not qualified to use it. Thomas opens a secret room where he has stored the most powerful dagger and comments that the dagger never ceases to impress him. Laura remarks that there are only 2 of these daggers in the world and expresses surprise that Thomas is willing to give one away. Thomas responds that he does not want the world's best weapon to rot in his headquarters. Meanwhile, Manager Wu is officially announced as the chairman of the Hunters Association. Jinna sees the news and remarks that she never expected Manager Wu to become a chairman. She calls him a stunner and reflects on how surprising it is. She then shifts her focus to her mom, and her mom requests Jinna to throw out waste food, and Jinna mentions that she is too lazy to do it. Her mom asks Jinna to at least fold the laundry by calling her sweet daughter. Jinna responds that her mom only thinks she is sweet when she needs her to do chores. Suddenly, Jinna notices something outside and goes to inform her mom. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to outside the Ajin Guild, where a group of reporters is waiting. They are in disbelief that Thomas is visiting the Ajin Guild. Inside the office, Thomas is patiently waiting for Jinwoo, while Jinho starts sweating nervously, but hides it with a big smile. Jinho also notices Lennart Neerman, the strongest hunter in Germany, visiting their office. Lennart is ranked 12th, according to the Federal Bureau of Hunters ranking system. It has already been 2 hours since both of them arrived, and Jinho tries to contact Jinwoo multiple times, but gets no response. Lennart wonders if he will get to meet Jinwoo, as Thomas is also waiting to see him. Thomas questions if Jinwoo is in the middle of a raid, and comments that Jinwoo must not visit the office very often, and Jinho responds with a yes. Suddenly, Jinwoo shows up at the office, and all the staff feel relieved that he has arrived, and Thomas greets Jinwoo with a hello. Jinwoo finally understands why so many reporters are gathered downstairs, and realizes because of Thomas. Jinho questions why Jinwoo has not been answering his calls, and Jinwoo explains that he has been busy with the increasing number of gates spawning everywhere. He thinks to himself that both Beru and Igris are close to ranking up as well. Thomas walks over to Jinwoo, and Jinho, seeing both of them together, silently prays that they do not fight again. Jinwoo questions Thomas about his reason for visiting Korea. Thomas reminds him that he promised to grab a bite together once his arm healed, and mentions that he also brought a gift for Jinwoo. Jinwoo gets a bit excited at the mention of a gift, and Thomas, noticing Jinwoo's interest, requests that they go somewhere else, as the gift is dangerous. Jinho starts shaking nervously after hearing the word dangerous, and wonders if it might be a bomb or a trap. Jinwoo notices another hunter waiting for him, and wonders if the hunter is there to ask for protection. Lennart introduces himself, but Thomas abruptly interrupts and insists that Jinwoo should leave with him. Lennart boldly claims that he has been waiting for Jinwoo for 2 hours as well, and demands to tag along. Thomas, with a commanding tone, states that the matters they are discussing are top secret, and that there is no room for Lennart. Lennart becomes frustrated with Thomas, as this is the first time he has been treated this way. Both Thomas and Jinwoo head out for dinner, and Thomas expresses that he has been waiting for this moment for a very long time. He signals his staff to bring the weapon, and Jinwoo becomes excited, wondering what the gift could be. Thomas asks if Jinwoo can feel its power, and slowly opens the case to reveal a dagger made from Kamish. He explains that this is his way of repaying Jinwoo for sparing his and his guild members' lives. Jinwoo questions if the dagger is made from Kamish's corpse. Thomas, impressed by Jinwoo's ability to recognize the material with a single glance, explains that they handed over Kamish's corpse to the government since it was highly valuable. However, he was given Kamish's largest and sharpest fang as a souvenir after pulling it out when Kamish bit him. Thomas adds that since the fang was too short to be made into a longsword, he had it turned into a pair of daggers, and now gives them to Jinwoo. Jinwoo picks up one of the daggers, and the system notifies him that the dagger has an additional 1500 attack damage. In comparison, the S-rank daggers Jinwoo usually uses only have 220 additional attack damage. Jinwoo starts testing the dagger, swinging it lightly, and Thomas warns him not to play with it, and explains that the dagger is so sharp it could slice through him, even if he used his reinforcement skill to strengthen his defenses. Thomas jokingly questions if Jinwoo is planning to kill him with the gift he just gave him. Jinwoo realizes that this is no ordinary dagger, as it strongly reacts to its mana. Everyone around them begins to feel the mana waves emanating from Jinwoo, and starts sweating nervously. Thomas turns to Laura and asks if she still thinks giving the daggers to Jinwoo was a mistake. Laura agrees with Thomas's decision, acknowledging that Jinwoo is the right person to wield them. Thomas asks Jinwoo for his opinion on the daggers. Jinwoo questions if it is truly okay for him to have such a powerful weapon. Thomas reassures him that the daggers are a small price to pay compared to the lives of his guild members. Jinwoo responds that he will gladly accept the gift. Suddenly, both Thomas and Jinwoo sense a powerful mana. All the pedestrians around them look up and see the largest gate ever opened in the sky. Jinwoo wonders if this is the same magisphere that Dr. Belzer had spoken about. Thomas, staring at the massive gate, comments that he has never seen anything like it before, and notes that it is even larger than the gate Kamish had burst out of. Meanwhile, everyone starts snapping pictures of the massive gate as reporters begin covering the event. They remark that the gate has covered the entire sky above the city and is the largest gate ever seen. All the residents come outside to witness the phenomenon, but none of them look happy seeing the gate. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Dr. Belzer, who explains that the gate in South Korea is just the beginning, and warns that similar events will happen in other major countries. One of the members questions how to handle the situation, considering Dr. Belzer has been researching gates and magic beasts for a long time. However, Dr. Belzer states that all they can do is pray that this unprecedented event does not end in tragedy. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Jinwoo, who tries to enter the gate with Kaisel. To his surprise, he is unable to enter, as it feels like some sort of wall is blocking him. Jinwoo thinks that if this were an ordinary gate, he could have broken it down, but this gate prevents even an awakened hunter from entering. He wonders if the magic beasts inside are different from the ones he has encountered before, and decides that he will not let anything inside go easy, as he must protect his family and friends. Suddenly, Jinwoo receives a call from Chairman Woo, who questions where Jinwoo is, as he cannot hear his voice properly. Jinwoo responds that he is somewhere up high, and says that he should call him Chairman from now on. Chairman Woo replies that Jinwoo can call him whatever he prefers, and admits admits that he still feels awkward about his promotion. Jinwoo reminds Chairman Woo of his earlier request, and Chairman Woo explains that they already conducted a satellite scan of the entire world and found no new gates anywhere else. Jinwoo is surprised to hear this and notes that it has been 3 hours since the gate spawned and no new gates have appeared since then, and concludes that this is not a coincidence. Chairman Woo explains to evacuate all civilians near the gate step by step to avoid chaos and asks Jinwoo about his plans. Meanwhile, Jinwoo begins training with Beru in the Hunter's Gym. Beru attacks Jinwoo with multiple strikes, but Jinwoo dodges every single one of them. Beru lunges at Jinwoo with his claws, but Jinwoo blocks the attack with one hand and questions if Beru is giving it his all. Beru kneels before Jinwoo and explains that he cannot possibly attack his king. Jinwoo reassures him that it is fine and that he wants to train harder, as Beru is the only one who can truly help him. Beru expresses his gratitude, saying he is deeply moved by Jinwoo's words. Jinwoo comments that Beru's vocabulary is improving every day and jokingly asks if he ate another human. He then commands Beru to continue their fight. Beru powers up and leaps at Jinwoo, but Jinwoo effortlessly dodges. Beru tries to punch Jinwoo, but Jinwoo blocks the punch with his hand and remarks that Beru has grown stronger since reaching the commander rank. Beru launches multiple attacks, but Jinwoo dodges all of them and counters with a powerful strike to Beru's stomach. Jinwoo warns Beru that there should only be one commander in his army and that once Igris and Greed reach the general rank, they will take Beru's position. He advises Beru to work harder to become even stronger. Beru, motivated by Jinwoo's words, decides not to hold back anymore, and the two continue their fight. Jinwoo realizes that although Beru is the strongest among his shadows, he is still far from the level of the monarchs. Noticing Jinwoo's momentary distraction, Beru attempts to attack, but Jinwoo grabs his hand and uses his stealth skill to disappear. Beru misses his attack, and Jinwoo reappears behind him, delivering a punch that sends Beru crashing into the wall. Beru praises Jinwoo's strength, calling himself a lowly servant and expressing amazement at Jinwoo's almighty power. Jinwoo tells Beru to stop watching historical dramas for a while, and suddenly notices that the entire gym is wrecked. Out of nowhere, Jinwoo receives a call from Chairman Woo. Jinwoo nervously explains that he has a total workforce of 300 ants who will clean the gym. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Thomas and Laura. Laura questions if Thomas plans to stay behind, and Thomas responds that he does not want to leave such a big and beautiful gate. Laura remarks that the gate is big, but not beautiful. Thomas explains that anything that stirs the heart is beautiful, and adds that Kamish and Sung Jinwoo are both beautiful. He admits that he wants all beautiful things for himself. Laura points out that even Thomas cannot have everything he desires, and mentions that the Federal Bureau is worried about him. Thomas responds that there is no point in going back since no new gates have appeared, and staying by Jinwoo's side is the safest place to be. He adds that if the gate is not stopped, there will be nothing left to worry about. Thomas concludes that this gate might mark the end of humanity or the beginning of something new. All the residents begin evacuating the area where the gate has spawned. Gina questions why they are not evacuating, and her mom explains that it is better to choose where to die if the place turns into a war zone. She adds that houses in their district are not advised to evacuate. Gina angrily expresses that she is planning to go to college next year and wants to enjoy her youth and college life. She declares that she does not want to die when her life is just about to start. Her mom agrees with her and confidently assures her that Jinwoo will protect her just like their father did. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Jinwoo, who wonders where the monarchs are hiding as he cannot sense their presence. He starts thinking about clearing the gate and questions if he can do it without sacrificing himself, and reflects on how much he has to protect now, and decides that he does not want to spend his time just checking the gate. Jinwoo checks his phone to see if he has any friends to spend time with, and suddenly remembers Cha Hae-In. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Cha Hae-In, and Cheol notices some hesitation in her lately. He expresses concern that she might be feeling fear in her heart, and remarks that it is natural to feel terrified as he feels the same way. Suddenly, Chan receives a call, and Cheol advises her to answer it as it might be an important matter. Cha Hae-In speaks on the phone and with a blushy face tells Cheol that she needs to leave as something has come up. She bows her head to her master, and Cheol, seeing her reaction, feels happy for her. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Jinwoo and Cha Hae-In go to an amusement park. Everyone starts whispering upon seeing Jinwoo with Cha Hae-In and wonders if she is Jinwoo's girlfriend. Jinwoo notices the crowd and remarks that he thought the place would be empty considering the circumstances. Cha Hae-In asks if Jinwoo likes amusement parks, and Jinwoo responds that he is not particularly interested in them, but has always wanted to visit one. Cha Hae-In asks why he chose to come with her, and Jinwoo explains that she is his only friend. He reminds her of the time she told the architect that she was his friend. Cha Hae-In blushes deeply and asks if he heard her words. Jinwoo responds that he has has better hearing than most people. Cha Hae-In inquires about the dungeon, and Jinwoo explains that he will share everything later, as he is still processing many things himself. Cha Hae-In looks around and notices the shadows shielding them. She remarks that the shadows might be drawing even more attention to them. Jinwoo explains that it is fine as long as the shadows block people's sight. Cha Hae-In suddenly realizes that this is the first time she has gone out for fun since becoming a hunter. She remarks that her heart feels so light now, and that being with Jinwoo feels different, as he has a special scent. Jinwoo asks if she wants to go on all the rides, and Cha Hae-In smiles and says she wants to try every single one of them. Seeing her reaction, Jinwoo realizes that he is not the only one who wanted to come here. Both of them go on rides and visit a haunted house and then eat food together. Jinwoo questions if Cha Hae-In is not having fun, as she has been quiet the entire time. Cha Hae-In responds that she is having a lot of fun. Jinwoo realizes that the rides might have felt slow to her since she is an S-rank hunter. He offers to take her somewhere truly thrilling, and both of them go for a ride on Kaisel. Jinwoo asks for her opinion on the ride, and Cha Hae-In responds that they are going very fast and flying at a high altitude. She remarks that the scenery is beautiful and asks why Jinwoo prefers an amusement park over this ride. Jinwoo explains that his father went missing in a gate that spawned in the same amusement park. Cha Hae-In thanks Jinwoo for everything he has done for her. Jinwoo mentions that there is something he wants to show her and takes her to a forest with an amazing night sky. Cha Hae-In feels happy spending time with Jinwoo and enjoys the moment. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a B-rank hunter who is worried about the dungeon break that is expected to occur in a few days. He bumps into another person and becomes angry at him. The other hunters watch them arguing, and one of the hunters notices the huge man and remarks that this person could even defeat Dongwook, an S-rank hunter. He guesses that they both might be hunters, since only hunters are present in that place. The other hunters start worrying about the B-rank hunter, as he seems to be losing control while confronting someone clearly more powerful than him. The B-rank hunter demands an apology for bumping into him and declares that he is an upper-tier B-rank hunter. Seeing the other hunter remain silent makes him even angrier. To everyone's shock, Rakan suddenly eats the B-rank hunter. Rakan smiles at the hunters and destroys the entire location with a single punch, sending the hunters flying. One of the hunters crashes into a building, and Rakan throws a car at him, taking his life. Rakan calls the hunters lowly humans and announces that he will hunt every single one of them by ripping apart their skin and flesh with his teeth and nails. He declares himself the king of beasts and roars, shaking the entire area. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to Cha Hae-In, who drinks some lake water. Jinwoo mentions that there is a hotel nearby where they can wash up and have breakfast, and asks if she is interested. Cha Hae-In agrees, and Jinwoo summons Kaisel. Cha Hae-In wonders why Jinwoo summoned Kaisel since the place is nearby. Jinwoo explains that it would take only 5 minutes if he ran at full speed. Cha Hae-In is surprised and wonders how many miles Jinwoo can cover in 5 minutes. Both of them start flying toward the hotel. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Chairman Woo, who is shocked after hearing that there is an intruder at the front of the association building. He asks if there are any casualties. A member explains that the exact number cannot be confirmed at the moment. Chairman Woo remains in shock, as there are still a few more days before the dungeon break, and wonders where the huge magic beast came from. He asks for Jinwoo's location, but the member explains that they cannot get hold of Jinwoo. Chairman Woo decides to handle the situation himself. Suddenly, another member arrives and informs him that a hunter has stepped forward to fight the magic beast. Chairman Woo questions if it is Sung Jinwoo, but the member clarifies that it is not Sung Jinwoo, though the hunter is a world-class hunter. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Rakan with an overwhelming aura surrounding him. Lennart from Germany arrives to confront Rakan. Lennart worries that he might not be able to defeat the magic beast and thinks this might be the end for him. He reflects that it might be his fate to be in Seoul at this moment to face the magic beast. Suddenly, Thomas appears and grabs Lennart by the head and pushes him aside, stating that Lennart is in his way. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Jinwoo and Cha Hae-In, who are having breakfast. Jinwoo suddenly receives a call from Chairman Woo, and Chairman questions why they have been unable to reach him. Jinwoo explains that he was outside of phone service until now. Chairman Woo informs him that a magic beast is rampaging in the middle of the city. Jinwoo finds this hard to believe, as there are still a few more days before the dungeon break. Chairman Woo insists that the information is accurate and explains that exactly one magic beast has appeared. Jinwoo is surprised to hear that a single magic beast has wiped out an entire guild and realizes that it is not an ordinary magic beast. Chairman Woo adds that Thomas is currently facing the beast. Jinwoo cannot believe this information, as his shadow has been tailing Thomas and should have reported anything unusual. He wonders why the shadow did not inform him even though an entire guild was wiped out. Jinwoo notices that his shadow's presence in Seoul feels very weak as if there is interference. He tries to connect to his shadow, but the system notifies him that the designated shadow cannot be found. Jinwoo explains to Cha Hae-In that there is a problem in Korea. Cha Hae-In questions if the dungeon break has already happened, but Jinwoo clarifies that this is something else. Jinwoo asks Chairman Woo if the beast has a shadow, and Chairman Woo advises him to check it himself, as it might be too dangerous for others to investigate. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to Rakan, who transforms into a more powerful being and begins walking slowly toward Thomas. All the hunters are stunned by Thomas showing up out of nowhere in Korea. Thomas instructs the other hunters to hurry and evacuate all the civilians. He glares at Rakan and decides to keep the magic beast in its place and defeat it without hesitation. Thomas uses his reinforcement skill to enhance his defenses. Both Rakan and Thomas glare at each other as mana waves from both of them clash, creating massive destruction. Rakan smirks at Thomas and attempts to attack him with his nails. However, thanks to Thomas's reinforcement, the nails fail to scratch him. Thomas delivers a powerful punch to Rakan's face, grabs his head, and smashes him into the ground. Meanwhile, Choi Jong-in arrives at the fight scene to assist with the evacuation. His guild member informs him that they are still evacuating people inside the building. Choi Jong-in inquires if any other guilds have been dispatched, and the guild member explains that both the Fiend and White Tiger guilds are on site and will try to control the magic beasts soon. Choi Jong-in begins sweating after hearing about the beast, and his guild member advises him to focus solely on the evacuation. Choi Jong-in is informed that Thomas is currently facing the mysterious magic beast. Suddenly, he senses Rakan's presence and remarks that it feels even worse than what he experienced during the Jeju Island raid. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to the fight, where Thomas delivers a punch that sends Rakan crashing into a building and completely destroys the building. Rakan retreats momentarily and then charges at Thomas with full force, landing a hit on his stomach. Thomas barely manages to hold his ground and grabs Rakan with both hands and smashes him down. In response, Rakan kicks Thomas in the face and starts smiling as he is clearly enjoying the fight. Thomas, deciding not to hold back, uses his reinforcement skill to enhance his defense. At the same time, the White Tiger Guild arrives at the fight scene. Baek Yoon-ho warns his guild members to be cautious, but suddenly a blast occurs right in front of him. Baek Yoon-ho is shocked by the strength of Rakan and watches as Rakan walks forward with a sinister smile. He starts sweating as he witnesses the intense battle between Thomas and Rakan. All the guild members collectively cheer for Thomas to kill Rakan, but Thomas angrily tells them to take cover. Baek Yoon-ho realizes that Rakan is not just a regular magic beast. Rakan looks down at Baek Yoon-ho, and Baek Yoon-ho starts sweating as he feels Rakan's immense strength. He cannot even make eye contact and feels like a small white tiger in front of an incredible wolf. Baek Yoon-ho tries his best not to be recognized as prey, as his instincts warn him of the danger. Rakan then shifts his focus back to Thomas. Rakan uses a skill similar to Commander's authority and begins throwing vehicles at Thomas. Thomas swiftly evades them with a single hand. Rakan crashes more cars toward Thomas, but to his surprise, Thomas uses his capture skill to pull Rakan toward him and smashes him down. Thomas attempts to punch Rakan again, but suddenly feels uneasiness and senses that he might lose this fight. Despite this, he decides to attack once more. Rakan grabs Thomas's hand, and Thomas begins trembling nervously. Rakan expresses his surprise that a mere ruler's vessel can wield such massive strength and declares that he has had enough of Thomas's tricks. Rakan cracks open his manifestation and questions if Thomas is afraid of him, and then hits Thomas with multiple strikes. All the White Tiger Guild members are in disbelief as they watch Thomas struggle against Rakan. Suddenly, Rakan notices a shadow hiding within Thomas's shadow. He grabs the ant shadow and questions what it is doing there before squashing it. Rakan shifts his focus back to Thomas and cracks his spiritual body, suggesting that they make the fight purely about brute strength. He completely shatters his manifestation. However, Thomas unexpectedly grabs Rakan by the throat and squeezes it with full force, twisting and breaking it. Despite this, Rakan turns back toward Thomas and grabs his face and smashes him into the ground. Rakan remarks that he is starting to feel hungry, but suddenly notices someone attacking him from behind. Lennart attacks at Rakan with his charge skill, causing him to slide back, and declares that he will not let Rakan kill Thomas. Lennart begins shivering as he feels the overwhelming strength of Rakan. Thomas advises him to run away, knowing that Lennart has no chance of winning. Despite this, Lennart decides to fight, acknowledging that he is also a hunter. He reflects that he has no regrets, and that even in his final moments he would choose an honorable death over a cowardly survival. Lennart convinces himself that he would make the same choice 100 times over. As Rakan charges at him, Lennart starts saying to himself that he made the right decision. However, as Rakan gets closer, Lennart begins to regret not running and wonders if he made the wrong choice. Rakan prepares to devour Lennart, but suddenly Kaisel attacks Rakan. Rakan counters by scratching Kaisel with his sharp nails, destroying him. Rakan smirks, mocking the weakness of the shadows, but Jinwoo emerges through the shadow and kicks Rakan down to the ground. Jinwoo instructs Lennart to take Thomas to a safe place. Rakan realizes that what the Frost Monarch said is true, that a human is carrying the vessel of Ashbourne. Rakan transforms into a wolf using his spiritual body manifestation, and the rest of the hunters begin to leave the area. Jinwoo notices Rakan's intense thirst for blood and realizes that Rakan is not the only monarch present in the city. Rakan becomes confused about how Jinwoo is able to generate such supreme strength with a human body and suspects that the architect might have something to do with it, as the Shadow Monarch must have made a deal with the architect. Suddenly, Croatia appears behind Jinwoo and wonders aloud if she can eat him, expressing her curiosity about how other monarchs might taste. The system identifies all three monarchs as enemies, and all four monarchs begin charging up. Jinwoo commands all his shadows to come forth. Igris and Iron immediately charge at the Frost Monarch, while both Tank and Jima attack Rakan. The rest of the shadows focus on Croatia. Rakan, seeing all the new shadows, wonders if this is the Shadow Monarch's new army. The Frost Monarch unleashes his breath attack, and Jinwoo blocks it using his daggers, but the rest of his shadows are frozen. The Frost Monarch confidently declares that the new Shadow army is weak and incapable of moving even a single inch inside his ice prison. Croatia questions why the Frost Monarch froze her children as they were just about to have a reunion. The Frost Monarch becomes irritated, accusing Jinwoo of believing that he can destroy the monarchs with such weak shadows. He realizes that Jinwoo has not yet gained the full strength of the Shadow Monarch and warns him not to underestimate them, as they are still monarchs. Jinwoo breaks free from the ice magic and looks directly at the Frost Monarch. Spinning his new dagger, Jinwoo confidently announces that he is going to take down the Frost Monarch. Frost Monarch summons his own ice army and calls Jinwoo a fool. Croatia decides to join the fight and commands the dead army using parasites. The dead army leaps at Jinwoo, but he slashes them apart with his dagger in a matter of seconds. Jinwoo realizes that Croatia is using corpses to create her army. Suddenly, an ice beast tries to crush Jinwoo, creating shockwaves, but Jinwoo dodges the attack and slices it apart with his dagger. All the other ice beasts attack Jinwoo at the same time, but he destroys all of them in a single second. Jinwoo suddenly senses danger and notices Rakan attempting to scratch him with his nails. Jinwoo barely dodges the attack, and both of them begin fighting. Rakan remarks that Jinwoo cannot harm him with just an iron stick, but to his shock, Jinwoo slashes his arm and Rakan screams in pain. Jinwoo explains that the dagger is not just an ordinary iron stick. Suddenly, Jinwoo notices a giant green hand coming toward him. The giant green hand tries to slam him down, but Jinwoo jumps away. Croatia summons 4 more giant green hands while Rakan heals his arm. Jinwoo begins to feel tired from facing all 3 monarchs. He takes a deep breath, and out of nowhere, Beru breaks out of the ice prison. Beru gets angry at Croatia for trying to harm his king and mockingly calls her an insect. Both Frost Monarch and Rakan are shocked that a shadow was able to break out of the ice prison. Rakan explains that the shadow is of commander level, and that every commander level shadow is essentially a god of destruction. Croatia becomes disappointed that Beru does not recognize her own mother and decides to punish him. She uses her green hand to slam him down, but Beru easily slashes the green hand apart and returns to his king. Beru kneels before Jinwoo and begins crying, saying that his king is truly a great person. He praises Jinwoo for holding his ground against 3 monarchs and expresses amazement at his greatness. Suddenly, the dead army charges at them, but Beru switches to an angry mode and slashes all of them apart with his claws. Croatia attacks Beru from behind, while Jinwoo gets caught in the giant green hands and is slammed down. Frost Monarch does not give Jinwoo a moment to retreat and attacks him with a large number of ice weapons. Jinwoo deflects every single ice weapon with his daggers. Frost Monarch questions how long Jinwoo can defend against their coordinated attacks. Suddenly, Frost Monarch is stabbed in the chest with a dagger. Jinwoo declares that he will make sure Frost Monarch does not leave this fight alive. Frost Monarch becomes frustrated, but Jinwoo notices that even a stab to the heart is not fatal to him. Jinwoo attacks Frost Monarch multiple times, but Frost Monarch dodges every single attack and smiles at Jinwoo's futile attempts. Suddenly, Rakan attacks Jinwoo from behind with his weapon and slashes him on the back. Jinwoo screams in pain while Beru is in shock seeing his king injured. Croatia calmly states that she is the mother of all insects and that she will gladly embrace Beru as her child even though he does not recognize her. Croatia grabs Beru while Rakan confidently announces that this is the end for Jinwoo. Beru shouts to all the shadows to help Jinwoo. Greed breaks out of the ice prison and declares that he will be the one to kill all of his king's King's enemies. Frost Monarch praises greed and guesses that he must have been a strong warrior before turning into a shadow. Frost Monarch notices all the high-ranking shadows breaking out of his spell. Despite this, Frost Monarch declares that Jinwoo's playtime is over as he already suffered a deep wound. Jinwoo smiles at them and uses his status recovery to completely heal his body, and this completely shocks the Monarchs. Meanwhile, the entire world watches the fight between Jinwoo and the Monarchs. Lennart notices a mana storm raging at the battlefield, while healers do their best to heal Thomas. Thomas asks Lennart for an update on the fight, and Lennart explains that it feels like he is witnessing the end of the world. Baek Yoon-ho watches the fight from a distance and realizes that Jinwoo is no longer the same person he once knew. He wonders how Jinwoo has gained so much strength in such a short time, even though he has the ability to level up. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to the fight. Igris attacks Rakan, and Rakan blocks the attack, while both Greed and Tusk attack the Frost Monarch. Greed's attack is stopped by an ice barrier, and Frost Monarch counters Tusk's Hymn of Fire Dragon with ice magic. Beru escapes from Quresha's green hand by slicing it apart, which angers Quresha, and she charges at Beru. Jinwoo attacks Quresha from behind and recalls the architect's last words about a pillar of fire holding up the world that would kill him. Jinwoo explains that the architect never told him whether the pillar would fall or not. Jinwoo effortlessly slashes Quresha with his daggers. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Lim Taegyu, who is waiting on top of a building to take a shot at the Monarchs. Lim Taegyu hesitates to interfere in the fight and decides to wait longer. It is revealed that the Fiend Guild's elite assassins were deployed 30 minutes ago in an effort to inflict a lethal wound on the Monarchs. Lim Taegyu worries about how many of them will survive by the end of the fight and realizes that they will die whether their attacks succeed or fail. He reflects that not even Thomas could defeat the Monarchs. Lim Taegyu finally decides to attack, but someone grabs him and advises him to just watch the fight. Lim Taegyu starts sweating and looks back to see who stopped him, but to his surprise, no one is there. Meanwhile, all the hunters who were deployed to defeat the Monarchs end up watching the battle from a distance. They realize the battle will not last long and the end seems near. Quresha regenerates her body completely and attacks Jinwoo with poison. The system notifies Jinwoo about the poison and successfully detoxifies it. Quresha becomes frustrated that even her poison does not work on Jinwoo and warns him that she will rip him to shreds. Jinwoo freezes her using Commander's authority, and Quresha feels an overwhelming power that she cannot break free from. Jinwoo activates his mutilation skill and slashes her into hundreds of pieces. Quresha accepts her defeat and for the first time feels what death is like. She realizes that Jinwoo has the strength to send beings like the Monarchs into darkness and fades into the world of nothingness. Jinwoo levels up by 3 levels after defeating the Monarch of Plagues. Frost Monarch is shocked that a mere human vessel was able to defeat Quresha and begins to worry that the Monarchs will experience the horror of facing the most powerful king. Rakan explains that Jinwoo is exhausted and that the fact he is depending on his shadows proves he is an incomplete monarch. Rakan declares that Jinwoo cannot stop a true monarch and tells the others not to fear him. Rakan attempts to kill Beru, and Jinwoo feels Beru's presence fading. Jinwoo remembers how Rakan killed the shadow assigned to Thomas in a similar way. Jinwoo decides to cancel the summon to save Beru, but the system notifies him that Beru cannot be recalled. Jinwoo dashes toward Rakan to save Beru, and Rakan jumps away. Jinwoo barely manages to stop Beru from being destroyed. Frost Monarch feels confident after hearing Rakan's words and realizes he has overestimated Jinwoo's powers. Frost Monarch transforms into his final form and brings out his trident. He announces that he will trap all of Jinwoo's shadows and make them resurrect repeatedly until Jinwoo runs out of mana. He declares that Jinwoo's shadows will become mere parasites feeding on his mana. Frost Monarch freezes all the shadows and attacks Jinwoo with his trident. Jinwoo tries to block the attack but gets scratched on his arm. Frost Monarch attacks again and smashes the entire ground. Frost Monarch believes Jinwoo is gone, but Jinwoo suddenly appears and attacks Frost Monarch with his daggers. Frost Monarch dodges the attacks and counters by hitting Jinwoo with his trident. Jinwoo slides back from the force of the attack and coughs blood. He realizes that Frost Monarch is incredibly fast. Frost Monarch notices that Jinwoo's incomplete spiritual body manifestation is consuming a large amount of mana and decides to finish him quickly. Frost Monarch dashes at Jinwoo, and Jinwoo blocks all his attacks. Jinwoo observes every movement of Frost Monarch and realizes that he just needs to outpace him to kill him. Frost Monarch notices that Jinwoo is scheming something and declares that it is useless. useless. Frost Monarch brings out another trident. Jinwoo suddenly appears behind Frost Monarch and feels confident that he can finish him. However, to his surprise, Frost Monarch smirks at him. All the hunters watching the fight are shocked as Jinwoo is suddenly stabbed from behind. Rakan pierces Jinwoo with his claws, and Jinwoo begins coughing blood. Jinwoo, still refusing to give up, tries to break free from Rakan's claws. Frost Monarch stabs Jinwoo in the chest with an ice dagger and urges him to heal just like before. Frost Monarch realizes that Jinwoo cannot heal again as he is still an incomplete monarch. Frost Monarch explains that Jinwoo will not live to witness the day their army sets foot on his world. He declares that they will create mountains from human corpses and rivers from their blood. He further adds that he will treat South Korea differently by freezing every human in the country and making them suffer for eternity by keeping them alive forever. Frost Monarch urges Jinwoo to make his final attempt to save his world and mocks that his futile effort will bring him joy. Frost Monarch freezes Jinwoo completely. Jinwoo slowly closes his eyes, and the system notifies that his HP has dropped to 0 and that the player is dead. Suddenly, the system announces that Jinwoo has met all the requirements for passive skills, and all his skills begin to max out. Jinwoo suddenly wakes up in a hospital and starts shaking nervously. He checks his chest for the wound but finds nothing and wonders if it was all just a dream. Jinwoo notices that he is still in the hospital and questions how he is alive after being stabbed by the ice dagger. Suddenly, Chairman Woo appears and Jinwoo questions him about how he is still alive. Chairman Woo is momentarily shocked and informs Jinwoo of 3 things. First, he clarifies that he is not the chairman but the manager of the surveillance team. Second, he asks about moving statues. Third, he questions how Jinwoo was able to recognize him and wonders if they have met before. Jinwoo is shocked upon hearing about the moving statues. Manager Woo further explains that members of the White Tiger Guild found him in a double dungeon. Jinwoo is in disbelief as the hospital looks familiar to him. Manager Woo notices that Jinwoo looks slightly different from his photos. Jinwoo remains deep in thought, trying to recall his memories. Manager Woo asks if Jinwoo is okay, and Jinwoo requests some alone time to recollect his thoughts. Jinwoo checks his system stats and realizes that he has retained all his stats. His appearance has not changed, and all the items he collected are still in his inventory. Suddenly, Gina shows up to check on her brother, but becomes confused, thinking she might be in the wrong room. Jinwoo tells her that he is her brother. Gina questions if he is really her brother, as he has grown much taller than her. Jinwoo nervously responds that she is just imagining it. Jinwoo decides to head to the Hunters Association and asks Gina to return to school. Gina angrily questions if he is finally going to quit being a hunter, but Jinwoo avoids her question. He advises Han Song-gi not to become a hunter and to focus on her studies. Han Song-gi is shocked that Jinwoo knows her name. Jinwoo decides to rebuild his shadow army as he has lost his entire army and begins to wonder how he has traveled to the past. Jinwoo goes for a reassessment of his rank, and the staff are in disbelief that he is an S-rank hunter, even though he looks like a homeless person. Jinwoo decides to meet the chairman, and a staff member offers to guide him to the office. But Jinwoo responds that he knows where the chairman's office is. Jinwoo heads to the chairman's office, and in the elevator, he encounters Kang Tae-shik. Kang Tae-shik tries to come up with a story to cover his tracks, and worries that he might get on Manager Woo's bad side if he does not provide a compelling excuse. Jinwoo boldly points out that Kang Tae-shik still has not reported his stealth skill. Kang Tae-shik is shocked and slowly reaches for his weapons. Jinwoo grabs his weapons instantly and warns him not to harm innocent hunters. He tells Kang Tae-shik that if he ever harms innocent people, he will kill him with his own hands. Kang Tae-shik checks his weapons and is shocked that Jinwoo grabbed them without him noticing. Jinwoo gives him a final warning not to hurt innocent hunters. Jinwoo finally meets the chairman. Chairman Go realizes that Jinwoo knows the entire process of Hunter's reevaluation as he arrives immediately after receiving his test results. Jinwoo suddenly receives a system notification to restart the world, but he ignores it. Jinwoo makes an offer to the chairman, requesting permission to go to Jeju Island to rebuild his shadow army. He asks the chairman to change the regulations to recognize his summoned beasts as hunters so he can participate in the raid alone. In return, Jinwoo offers to take care of Jeju Island by himself. The chairman mentions that many have failed to clear Jeju Island, but suddenly feels the overwhelming energy coming from Jinwoo. Jinwoo confidently assures him that he will exterminate every single ant on Jeju Island and explains that this is something only he can do. The chairman realizes that Jinwoo possesses power that exceeds national-level hunters and is shocked witnessing his aura. Jinwoo begins his journey again, starting with Hwang Dong-suk and then Kang Tae-shik. The system continuously notifies Jinwoo, asking if he would like to restart the world. Joo-hee announces her retirement, and Jinwoo clears the Red Gate incident and the Kargalgan dungeon. Jinwoo clears the Demon Castle and uses the Elixir of Life to cure his mother's eternal slumber. Finally, he clears the Jeju Island raid and extracts the shadow shadow of Beru. Despite all this, the system continues to notify Jinwoo to restart the world. Jinwoo finally realizes that this is just an illusion. He demands to clear the illusion and urges the individual behind it to show up. Jinwoo is finally summoned before Ashbourne, and Jinwoo questions if he is the king of the dead. Ashbourne offers Jinwoo the chance to stay in this world forever if he desires, and describes it as a never-ending happy dream. Jinwoo questions if Ashbourne is offering him a life in the illusion forever. Ashbourne clarifies that he is not the creator of the illusion and explains that Jinwoo himself created this world. He further reveals that Jinwoo's desire to correct his mistakes gave birth to the illusion, which is more accurately called eternal slumber or death. Ashbourne explains that he has been watching Jinwoo for a long time and recalls the many moments when Jinwoo was close to death but resisted it with desperation. Ashbourne remarks that he is the record of Jinwoo's struggles, a reward for his pain, and also eternal slumber and death. Ashbourne explains that within his domain, Jinwoo can do anything he pleases because Jinwoo is himself. Ashbourne demonstrates his powers by growing a tree and creating flowers, and explains that Jinwoo can turn anything in his domain into his own power by absorbing it. Ashbourne reveals that this strength is only possible within his domain, and that Jinwoo now possesses omnipotent power to create or destroy the world or even change it. Jinwoo is shocked and questions if he truly possesses the same powers as Ashbourne. Ashbourne expresses his desire to meet Jinwoo and reveals that he is the Shadow Monarch, the king who rules over the dead and governs the deepest depths of darkness. Jinwoo questions why Ashbourne chose him as his successor, and Ashbourne decides to show him the exact reason. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to Rakan, who confirms that Jinwoo is no longer breathing. Thomas remarks that he can no longer feel Jinwoo's presence and questions Lennart about him. Baek Yoonho remains in shock, unable to comprehend Jinwoo's death, and realizes that there is no one else left to defeat the Monarchs. Lim Taegyu regrets his earlier decision not to attack the Monarchs and decides to act now, believing it might not be too late. He instructs his guild members to prepare to fire on his command and declares that their target is the Frost Monarch. Suddenly, Lim Taegyu stops from attacking, and Frost Monarch senses a massive power radiating from Jinwoo's black heart. Both Frost Monarch and Rakan realize that Jinwoo is transforming into the True Shadow Monarch and decide to stop it at all costs. They attempt to attack Jinwoo, but an individual suddenly kicks Rakan in the face, sending both Frost Monarch and Rakan crashing to the ground. Sung Ilwan appears to rescue his son and warns the Monarchs that they cannot lay a finger on his child. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Ashbourne's backstory. In another world where nothing else existed, the Absolute Being split the light to create the rulers and split the darkness to create the 8 monarchs. The monarchs were born to destroy the world, while the rulers were born to defend it from darkness, resulting in an endless war between the two. After a long and exhausting war, the rulers began to question why the Absolute Being had not helped them in their fight against the monarchs. They lamented the countless soldiers they had lost in his honor and begged him to grant them the strength to kill the monarchs. However, the Absolute Being did not respond to their pleas. The rulers eventually realized that the war was merely entertainment for the Absolute Being and that he had no intention of ending it. Ashbourne explains the 3 commandments that all rulers must follow. The first is to worship the Absolute Being, the second is to praise the god, and the third is to prove their faith to the Absolute Being. He reveals that those who fail to follow the commandments will not be spared, but even those who obey them are destined to face death. Ashbourne explains that the rulers eventually realized the war would never end as long as the Absolute Being existed. All the rulers decided to draw their swords to put an end to the meaningless fight, leading to a rebellion. Ashbourne reveals that he was a ruler who stood against the other rulers' plan to kill the Absolute Being. However, his army was no match for the rulers' combined forces. Ashbourne lost the battle and, near death, found himself in darkness. There, he discovered that the Absolute Being had left a hidden power within him. He transformed into the Shadow Monarch, gaining the power to command the dead army. Ashbourne used his new army to battle the rulers, but it was already too late as the Absolute Being had been murdered by his own creations. After killing the Absolute Being, the fragment of brilliant light assumes the position of gods and becomes the rulers. They use devices containing the Absolute Being's powers to attack the monarchs. Using this power, they capture the monarch of giants, and the balance of power collapses. Ashbourne reveals that he takes this opportunity to join the monarchs in their battle against the rulers. The monarchs have no choice but to allow Ashbourne to join them in order to defeat the rulers. Ashbourne fights alongside the monarchs not as a fragment of brilliant light, but as the Shadow Monarch. His power to command the dead becomes his strength as he commands dead soldiers on the battlefield. When Ashbourne reaches the same power level as the Dragon King, both the monarchs and rulers begin to fear him. Eventually, 2 monarchs join forces to bring him down, and his shadow army is completely destroyed in the battle. Ashbourne explains that his excessive power brings betrayal once again, while he manages to kill Baron, the king of white flames, Rakan escapes from him. The rulers appear, and Ashbourne confines the king of white flames within his shadows. All the rulers kneel before Ashbourne and plead for his forgiveness. They explain that Ashbourne has no reason to fight them anymore. Ashbourne realizes that the rulers wish to make peace with him, even though they have the power to kill him. He understands that this might be their way of showing respect to him as a fellow fragment of brilliant light who once led the army on the front lines. Ashbourne angrily reminds them that they killed their master. One of the rulers responds that the absolute being is also their master. This frustrates Ashbourne, and he grabs the ruler, declaring that this makes their crime even more disgraceful. The ruler explains that this was their only way to end the war, and admits that they felt terrible for going against the absolute being. The ruler requests Ashbourne to kill him by piercing him with his spears so that Ashbourne can emerge as the victor of the war. The rest of the rulers also pledge for forgiveness. Ashbourne becomes confused by their actions and decides to go into hiding to plan his revenge. Ashbourne reveals that he confines the monarch of white flames within his shadows and plans to kill Rakan for his actions. While Ashbourne is in hiding, the monarchs lose immense battle power and are defeated by the rulers. The monarchs escape to a gap between dimensions. After Ashbourne reappears, the Dragon King decides to increase their battle strength and prevents them from fighting. The Dragon King gladly accepts Ashbourne to join their side. All the monarchs decide to build a new army from a world where the rulers cannot find them, and they select Earth. Ashbourne reveals that the arrival of the monarchs causes inevitable destruction to humankind. He shows Jinwoo a city engulfed in a sea of flames. Jinwoo notices this from the demon castle and questions if this is the future of Earth. Ashbourne clarifies that this is their past and explains that the monarchs successfully destroyed Earth. He further adds that the rulers exist to maintain the world after the death of the absolute being. The rulers send their army to fight the monarchs after tracking them, but it is too late. The rulers become furious that they cannot catch the denizens of chaos and realize that another world has been destroyed. The rulers decide to set everything right and use a forbidden device containing the powers of the absolute being. The device is called the Cup of Reincarnation, and it has the power to turn back time by approximately 10 years. After this, the rulers do everything they can to protect the world, but Earth is too weak to fight against the monarchs. A world without mana cannot withstand the battle between the two sides. Regardless of which side wins the battle, the world would be destroyed. The rulers realize that they cannot save everyone and ultimately decide to save a portion of humans so that life on Earth can continue. Jinwoo suddenly realizes that this is how the rulers create hunters. Ashbourne explains that the rulers are desperate to save the human world and choose to create beings who can survive the war between the rulers and the monarchs. Jinwoo reflects that the demon castle might be a memory fragment left behind by the Shadow Monarch. Jinwoo asks if the world has been destroyed countless times. Ashbourne responds that it has been destroyed multiple times and explains that time cannot change the flow of higher beings. He reveals that the higher beings retain their past memories. The monarchs use these memories to their advantage and refine their plans repeatedly until the Cup of Reincarnation becomes useless. Jinwoo is shocked to learn that the Cup of Reincarnation has a limit. Ashbourne explains that there is no such thing as infinite power and that all power eventually comes to an end. Jinwoo questions how the rulers were able to kill their own creator. Ashbourne provides an example of how humans are sometimes killed or hurt by their own inventions. He explains that the rulers were created to fight, and this gave them more than enough power to overthrow their creator. Ashbourne explains that just as the rulers strengthened the world by lending power to humans, the monarchs took inspiration from this and borrowed human bodies to descend upon Earth. This allowed them to reach Earth with their armies sooner than expected. The monarchs planned to use the mana spread throughout the world to turn the entire Earth into one large trap. Jinwoo asks if this plan is meant to slaughter the ruler's army in a single strike. Ashbourne confirms this. Ashbourne reveals that for a monarch to obtain a human vessel, they need someone who can handle their power. This is the reason both the Dragon King and the Shadow Monarch could not find their human vessels. Ashbourne explains that the architect came to him with a proposal offering him a human vessel in exchange for immortality. The architect searches for a human vessel with high physical and mental strength and designs a system to find a vessel highly responsive to his mana. However, the process is not simple. Ashbourne notices Jinwoo and observes how he steps beyond the boundaries of human limitations. Even though Jinwoo is weak and constantly near death, he always manages to escape. Ashbourne reveals that he has watched Jinwoo for a very long time and decides to choose him, even though the architect never approved. Ashbourne explains that he is the record of Jinwoo's struggles and the evidence of his pain. Jinwoo responds that even though he broke free from Ashbourne's scheme, he is unsure if he is strong enough to receive his powers. Ashbourne explains that they made it possible using the architect's system, which allowed Jinwoo to adapt to his strength through a game-like structure. Gradually, Jinwoo's body was able to accommodate his powers. Jinwoo realized realizes that this is why the system is designed like a video game and why he is called a player. He asks why Ashbourne betrayed the architect. Ashbourne reveals that based on the ruler's apology and the monarch's betrayal, he made the simple decision to grant his powers to Jinwoo. Ashbourne says that he enjoyed their time together and probably did not want to lose him. He gives Jinwoo a choice to either stay in his domain and rest in eternal sleep with the wonderful dreams he created, or return to reality and face his enemies. Jinwoo questions Ashbourne's decision not to choose the rulers and mentions that he lost his will to fight. He asks why Ashbourne leaves for another world with the monarchs. Ashbourne responds that he has no place for himself. Jinwoo declares that this is the exact reason he cannot stay in the illusion, as he does not belong there. Ashbourne becomes happy with Jinwoo's decision. Jinwoo wonders if he will ever see Ashbourne again. Ashbourne reveals that he is returning to eternal sleep and that their paths might not cross again. The system notifies Jinwoo that all the limits on his powers have been lifted. It reveals that Igris has regained his original commander-level power, and Beru's power has also increased significantly. The system asks Jinwoo if he wants to delete it, and Jinwoo agrees. Suddenly, a flash of light appears, and a massive mana wave begins to emit from Jinwoo. Both Frost Monarch and Rakan are caught in the wave. Frost Monarch questions if Sung Ilwan is truly going to protect the human who is about to inherit the powers of the Shadow Monarch. He describes it as the worst catastrophic disaster that will bring ruin to the world, and wonders why the rulers are helping the Shadow Monarch. Rakan realizes there is no time to argue, and both monarchs prepare to fight. Both monarchs charge at Sung Ilwan. Frost Monarch attacks with his trident, but Sung Ilwan dodges it and successfully evades Rakan's attacks as well. Sung Ilwan dashes behind Frost Monarch and pierces his shoulder with a dagger. Frost Monarch realizes that Sung Ilwan is reading all his movements and adjusting accordingly. Rakan observes that Sung Ilwan moves like a warrior who has faced countless battles, and that he is carefully positioning himself behind Frost Monarch's trident to block all his strikes. Frost Monarch attempts to use his breath attack, but Sung Ilwan kicks him in the face, sending him crashing into a building. Rakan tries to devour Sung Ilwan, but Sung Ilwan stabs him in the mouth with his dagger, causing Rakan to scream in pain. Sung Ilwan gives Rakan no chance to recover and stabs him again. Rakan pulls out the dagger and declares that he will tear Sung Ilwan to pieces. Suddenly, Rakan senses an overwhelming power coming from Jinwoo and jumps away from him. Frost Monarch urges Rakan to try again to kill Jinwoo, but Rakan decides to give up. This frustrates Frost Monarch, who reminds Rakan how close they are to killing Jinwoo. Rakan explains that the mana around Jinwoo is growing much larger and announces that the Shadow Monarch is coming. He declares that he wants no part in this battle anymore. Frost Monarch pleads with him to fight again, but Rakan remarks that he only agreed to fight Jinwoo in his human form. Now that Jinwoo has become the true Shadow Monarch, Rakan feels no obligation to keep his promise to kill him. Frost Monarch angrily accuses Rakan of running away from the battle and urges him to keep his pride as the King of Beasts. Rakan explains that he knows the true power of the Shadow Monarch as he has fought him before. Wishing Frost Monarch luck, Rakan opens a portal and leaves the battlefield. Frost Monarch decides to unleash his full power and creates a giant mana storm. All the hunters retreat from the battlefield. Frost Monarch attacks Sung Ilwan with a large number of tridents, but Sung Ilwan blocks all of them. Frost Monarch becomes frustrated that a mere human vessel is challenging him. He creates a massive ice stone and warns that he will imprison Sung Ilwan along with Jinwoo's shadows for eternity. Sung Ilwan becomes terrified as he realizes that Frost Monarch is trying to destroy the entire area. An ice arrow slices him, and Frost Monarch follows up with a barrage of ice arrows and the massive ice stone. Sung Ilwan is frozen in fear, but Beru effortlessly destroys the massive ice stone. Igris comes to Sung Ilwan's rescue and mocks Frost Monarch, suggesting that he should not call himself a king with such weak powers. Frost Monarch realizes that Igris has broken free from his spell and regained his original powers. Jinwoo breaks out of the ice and calmly remarks that prophecies should not be trusted. Jinwoo notices that Rakan has fled the battlefield. Both Igris and Beru kneel before Jinwoo. Jinwoo boldly declares that he did not give Rakan permission to run away. Frost Monarch visibly trembles as he sees the wall of mana surrounding Jinwoo and realizes that the difference in their strength is far too great. Jinwoo turns his back and takes his eyes off Frost Monarch. Frost Monarch decides to act, sensing an opportunity that may never come again. Even though he knows the immense gap in their power, Frost Monarch believes that if he misses this chance, his death will be inevitable. He charges up and attempts to kill Jinwoo with a single strike. Frost Monarch blasts ice magic through his trident at Jinwoo, but Jinwoo effortlessly cracks it with a single hand. Frost Monarch is left in shock as he witnesses the overwhelming power of the Shadow Monarch. Jinwoo decides to finish Frost Monarch last and orders him to wait until he deals with the King of Beasts. Meanwhile, Rakan emerges from the portal and finds himself in a distant forest. He remarks remarks how he felt the presence of death and regrets his earlier actions of arguing with Frost Monarch. Rakan wishes he had escaped earlier and decides to keep a low profile until the Dragon King arrives. Out of nowhere, Rakan senses an overwhelming aura approaching him and smells death in the air. Jinwoo appears behind Rakan, and Rakan drops to his knees as he senses the vast difference in their strength. Rakan bows his head to Jinwoo and decides to submit to his commands. Rakan pleads for forgiveness and declares that he no longer wishes to fight Jinwoo. He offers to become an ally and fight alongside him. Rakan further explains that the Dragon King's army will soon descend upon the world and offers to assist Jinwoo with his own army of beasts. Jinwoo agrees to Rakan's request. Rakan smirks, thinking that Jinwoo is a fool, and he is not the true Shadow Monarch because the Shadow Monarch would never forgive a traitor. Rakan recalls how he not only betrayed the Shadow Monarch, but also tried to kill his vessel. He remarks that human kindness has bought him some time and plans to rip Jinwoo to shreds once the Dragon King arrives. Rakan declares his loyalty to Jinwoo, but Jinwoo responds that there is a condition. Jinwoo explains that Rakan's claws pierced his chest, leaving 5 scars, and that if Rakan can withstand 5 attacks from him, he will forgive him. Rakan becomes enraged at Jinwoo's words and roars in anger for being made a fool. He knows he will die after the battle, but feels confident that he can inflict some damage on Jinwoo before his death. Jinwoo brings out his dagger and in an instant slices off Rakan's arm. Jinwoo calmly states that Rakan now has 4 more attacks to endure. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Frost Monarch, who observes Beru healing all the hunters. Frost Monarch remarks that he can handle Beru. Suddenly, Frost Monarch is attacked and barely dodges the strike. He sees Igris charging at him and realizes that Igris is a significant threat. Frost Monarch recalls that Igris is one of the 2 wings of the Shadow Army and is known as the Knight of Death. Frost Monarch understands that Igris can regenerate continuously as long as the Shadow Monarch's mana is not depleted, and that he is at disadvantage as he cannot recover from mana lost due to spiritual body manifestation. Frost Monarch decides to attack Igris, and Igris in response attempts to slice him, but Frost Monarch confidently declares that Igris cannot stand against him. Suddenly, Igris stops attacking and a portal opens. Jinwoo slowly walks out of the portal and throws Rakan's fangs onto the ground. Frost Monarch is shocked to see the fangs. Jinwoo exudes an overwhelming aura and calmly announces that the King of Beasts is dead. Frost Monarch is in disbelief that Jinwoo defeated Rakan in mere minutes. Jinwoo explains that the deaths of all 3 monarchs will serve as a warning to the rest of the monarchs. Frost Monarch becomes enraged and decides to attack Jinwoo. To his surprise, he is stabbed with a dagger. Frost Monarch attempts to use his breath attack, but Jinwoo stops it with Commander's authority and slashes him with Kamish's dagger. Jinwoo states that Rakan died on the 4th attack and wonders how many strikes Frost Monarch can withstand. Jinwoo finishes Frost Monarch off. Beru approaches Jinwoo to check on him, and Jinwoo inquires about the man who saved him earlier. Jinwoo notices a dagger on the ground and follows the trail of blood footprints. Meanwhile, Sung Il-hwan's body begins to fall apart and realizes that this must be the consequence of using the ruler's powers in a human body. Suddenly, Jinwoo appears and asks his father if he plans to leave him again without saying a word. Sung Il-hwan begins explaining his story of why he never returned home. He starts by describing how everyone must exit the gate within an hour after defeating the dungeon boss. However, he failed to exit the gate and became trapped inside. He stayed there for a long time with no food and no sleep. One day, the rulers contacted him and offered him their powers in exchange for stopping the monarchs, including the Shadow Monarch, who would soon be born. Sung Il-hwan had no choice but to accept their terms, as it was his only way to escape. He returned to Earth and began working as a messenger for the rulers to carry out their mission. But when he saw Jinwoo fighting the giants during the Tokyo dungeon break, he could not bring himself to kill his own son, even though he knew the Shadow Monarch resided in his son's body. All he could do was watch from a distance. After Jinwoo killed the giant monarch, the rulers decided to change their plan. They ordered Sung Il-hwan to protect the Shadow Monarch, as they realized they needed his power to destroy the monarchs. The rulers understood the risk they were taking, as they were unsure if the Shadow Monarch would side with humans or the monarchs. However, they knew he was the only one who could truly stop the Dragon King and his army. Sung Il-hwan sadly admits that he did not want his son to see this side of him and asks if Jinwoo hates him for not returning home. Jinwoo responds that he hated him a few times, but adds that he always thought about his father when he first started as a hunter. He recalls every time he came close to death and each time he returned home. Jinwoo expresses how much he missed his father and asks if his father missed him too. Sung Il-hwan begins crying and says that not a single moment passed without him thinking about Jinwoo, and that watching him from afar brought him joy. Sung Il-hwan's body begins to fade away as he walks toward Jinwoo and hugs him, saying that he has become a fine young man. Jinwoo also starts crying as he hears his father's last words and angrily questions if the rulers cast him aside after using him for their schemes. Sung Il-hwan happily explains that the rulers simply gave him the opportunity to make a choice, and he chose to protect his son because it was was the right thing to do. Jinwoo pleads that he wanted to spend more time and talk more with his father. Sung Il-won apologizes for not being a better father and completely fades away. Jinwoo becomes overwhelmed with frustration and starts shouting, unable to bear the pain. Meanwhile, Jinwoo's mother feels an emptiness in her heart and tells Jinna that they can leave the house now and begins crying. At the same time, Jinwoo angrily shouts at the monarchs and vows to make them pay for what happened. The day the Shadow Monarch cries marks the beginning of the real war between Jinwoo and the monarchs. Ambulances arrive at the scene to transport the wounded hunters, and Thomas is declared out of danger. Jinwoo returns to his apartment, where his family feels relieved and happy to see him return home safely. Meanwhile, Choi Jong-in remarks that Baek Yoon-ho looked rough after facing Rakan and sarcastically asks if he is feeling better now. Baek Yoon-ho responds by asking him to wipe the sweat off his forehead first. Choi Jong-in offers him a pill to calm his nerves as his heart might still be pounding. Chairman Woo watches the destruction from his office and reflects on how Jinwoo kept his promise to take revenge for Chairman Go Gunhee's assassination. He thanks Jinwoo for killing Frost Monarch. The Hunters Association releases an official statement declaring that the beasts were unidentified monsters and that the damage caused by the battle is deeply shocking. The scene shifts to the day of the dungeon break, where all the hunters gather to fight the beasts. Liu Zhigang comments that the gate is living up to its hype and remarks that even if every hunter fights the gate, they might just get sucked in and disappear forever. Thomas arrives to assist South Korea, and Chairman Woo observes hunters from around the world gathering in one place. He wonders how many will survive by the end of the dungeon break. Jinwoo feels nervous about the outcome of the dungeon break, and Cha Hae-In notes that this is the first time she has seen him so nervous. Suddenly, the gate cracks open and everyone sees a massive army emerging from it. Jinwoo is shocked to see the Shadow Army coming out of the gate, and Bellion, the commander of the gate, steps forward. One of the hunters urges everyone to charge at the shadows, and the mage-type hunters prepare to attack. Suddenly, Jinwoo requests everyone to stop, and Chairman Woo demands an explanation. Jinwoo calmly assures them not to worry. Bellion begins walking toward Jinwoo, and Choi Jong-in becomes concerned, wondering if Jinwoo plans to face all the enemies alone. Jinwoo slowly walks toward the shadows, and both he and Bellion gaze at each other. Unexpectedly, Bellion kneels before Jinwoo greets him as his king and introduces himself as Bellion the Grand Marshal. He presents the entire Shadow Monarch's army to Jinwoo. Chairman Woo is in disbelief as he watches the magic beasts from the dungeon break, bowing to Jinwoo. Thomas and Lennart notice 3 dragon shadows among the army and remark that each one is powerful enough to wipe out the entire human race. Jinwoo questions if this is truly the shadow army of the former Shadow Monarch, the army passed down to him by Ashbourne. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Korean Hunters Association a few days later, where members discuss the demands from the Federal Bureau and foreign press for a statement about recent events and Jinwoo's whereabouts. One member informs the group that the host of the Jimmy Show from the Hunters channel wants to interview Jinwoo. Another member irritatingly suggests that Jimmy should find Jinwoo himself if he wants an interview. One member wonders why Jinwoo's summoned beasts emerged from the gate, and Chairman Woo retorts by asking if he would prefer the actual beasts to come out instead of shadows. The member begins sweating at the thought. Chairman Woo explains that they should be grateful for only answering silly media questions rather than receiving calls from the families of deceased hunters. Manager Woo reflects on how Jinwoo absorbed over 100,000 beasts into his army and notes that this is not the first time Jinwoo has vanished. He urges the others to understand that Jinwoo also needs peace and time to himself. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Jinwoo, who is watching a battle between his shadows. Bellion is impressed by Jinwoo's idea of dividing his army into 2 parts and making them fight each other. Jinwoo explains that since his shadows cannot die, this battle poses no problem. Suddenly, Beru approaches Jinwoo and requests to be tested for the position of Grand Marshal. Bellion immediately understands the meaning behind Beru's words and accepts the challenge. Beru formally challenges Bellion to a duel for the position of Grand Marshal. Jinwoo becomes excited to witness a fight between 2 of his strongest shadows. Beru roars in an attempt to intimidate Bellion, but Bellion calmly draws his massive longsword. Jinwoo notices that Bellion wields a broadsword similar to Igris, but realizes that Bellion's sword and build are much larger. He wonders if Bellion's specialty lies in strength rather than speed. Beru dashes at Bellion, and Jinwoo predicts that Beru might have the advantage due to his speed and agility against an opponent with higher strength but less agility. Suddenly, Bellion uses his blade like a centipede to whip Beru. Jinwoo is shocked to see the sword being used in such a way. Beru barely dodges the attack, but Bellion strikes again, slamming Beru to the ground and ending the fight with a single blow. Jinwoo is surprised that the fight ends so quickly and realizes that Bellion neutralized Beru's agility in an instant. He observes that Bellion's reflexes are far better than expected and that his single blow is powerful enough to crumble the earth. Jinwoo praises Bellion's strength and understands why he is the Grand Marshal. Jinwoo advises Bellion not to let his guard down around Beru, as an insect's greatest strength is its determination. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Beijing Airport, where Liu Jigang has just arrived. Some people question his decision to help South Korea with their gate, while others praise his willingness to assist. Liu Jigang responds that those questioning his decision are foolish. He explains that their country is right next to South Korea, and that if Jinwoo fails to stop the beasts, he would also be unable to defeat them, and this is why he decided to help Jinwoo. Suddenly, Liu Jigang stops in his tracks and is shocked to see a massive Magisphere gate in his own country. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Monarchs, where the Dragon King is informed that the Shadow Monarch has turned against them. The Dragon King decides to deal with the Shadow Monarch personally and commands his dragon army to prepare for battle.